Hey guys, welcome back to SRT Learning, and this is Ankit Prajapati, and today we're gonna cover another questions on API testing and the rest assured side. So if you are preparing for the QA automation job role, or if you are like having interview like in near days, I would suggest just go through our playlist because you will find all most of the like frequently asked questions by the big tech companies, that like Infosys, that TCS and all those big companies for automation interviews. Okay, so let's see what we're gonna cover today in API side. So how do you perform schema validation in API? Okay, so I would suggest this is one of the frequently asked questions. Why? Because the validation in API, right, it mainly come from the schema, right? Whatever the schema is, in simple term I will just say, the structure that API contain. Okay, the values, the data types and all those things. So at the end goal of any experience, or a, I will just say, fresher tester as well, they normally go and do the API testing like that way. Okay, so let's we understand this question with a little bit of description and a few of the syntax. So schema validation in API testing is the process of verifying that structure of the API response match with the expected contract. Like, so whatever the expected result they wants to be matched, like the data types, the file name, the field name and all those things. Okay, then if there is any nested object, then all those things should be matched based on the API documentation, the requirement that they have been provided, and to the response that they have given. Okay, and for that one what we can use some mean and max value expression, then regular expression pattern and all those things to obtain those information and then validate that particular information in our testing. Okay, so schema validation is simple. You need to include the field name, the field data type, the nested object arrays, and sometimes contain minimum maximum values, and the regular expression for emails and phone numbers and all those things. Okay, so for to how to perform the schema validation. So why schema validation is important? So first let's understand this one. So to detect the contract violation, okay, prevent the breaking the change in the API response. So that is the first thing why it is required. Then ensure consistency. Consumer can reliable parse data, right? So the data that you are getting from the data that your consumer is getting from you, right, it should be reliably parsed data. That means whatever the data that they require, it should be matched with their requirement from us. Okay, so it's not about we put them all the junk data, or whatever the unnecessary information. So data parsing is very much important, and for that one the validation of our schema should be there, so then they can use whatever the data that they have subscribed for. Okay, then speed debugging means immediately flag wrong data types or missing fields. So that's why the schema validation is useful. Okay, you need to make sure, because when you validate those kind of things, anything wrong in the data type, anything wrong in a field, or anything missing in the data, then it can be easily I will just say is the captured in your validation point. Okay, so now let's we understand how you can perform, because this is why schema validation is important. These 3 points you can speak 2 or 3 in your interview, that is more than enough. But how you can perform? So step to perform schema validation. So get an expected schema. Like, first you need to understand what is your expected schema. Okay, what exactly you want to be validated, because you need some benchmark to compare. So for that one, so let's suppose you maybe have some OpenAPI or Swagger spec specifications like .yml file or .json file from your developer. That is the part you want to put in validation. You can refer the API documentation as well to understand about the schema of that specific API. A manually created JSON schema, you can manually create the JSON schema by yourself based on the API documentation, and you can use in a validation. Okay, so this is how the schema look like. You see, type object, then properties, then ID type integer, name is equal to string, then email is equal to string, format email, this is for regular expression, and required means ID, name and field. So three of them are mandatory field. So this is a simple format of the schema of any API. Okay, this is how the API schema will look like. These are the properties we need to validate, the type of the field, then I will just say is the value and the name of the field and all those things. Okay, and if it is mandatory or not, those kind of things you can validate. So get the expected schema first, the step to perform the validation. Now This is the first method that you can use. Once you have the expected schema, you know what exactly you want to validate. So using the JSON schema library, this is available in JavaScript and Python. You can use the JSON schema library like this way. You can just mock the API response is equal to response.get. You get this one, then you store the data. Data is equal to response.json. You see, whatever the response you are getting from this get call, you store in the JSON. Then you can just say validate instance is equal to data and schema is equal to schema, and print these things. So this is one way JSON schema library you can use, and you can use the to compare the actual API response JSON with the predefined JSON schema. Okay, so this is one of the way you can validate the schema. Then the next way, using the inner rest assured, what you can do in Java and rest assured, you can just put this one. You can just say given when get these particular things and assert that body. Then you can use this one, match JSON schema in class path, and you can put your JSON. You see, do schema.json, or you can put your API.json or something like that way. So that file you can put it over here. So that will help you to validate the JSON schema in your rest assured way. So this is another format how you can validate the JSON schema in your rest assured code. Okay, and this is simple in a Python or JavaScript, like JSON schema library you can use, and this couple of lines will help you to validate the JSON schema. Okay, now the method is in a Postman. Okay, if you are working on a Postman, then how you can do? So in a Postman, you know there is a tab, test tab. So in a test tab you can put this code. So this code will do this postman.test schema is valid or not, then constant, you store your schema over here. This is our schema. You see, this is the schema like this way. This is the schema as a expected schema. You can consider this is the expected schema, and then when you execute pm.response.toHave.json schema is equal to this schema, this value schema. So this is how you can also do the validation. Okay, let me make it little bit bigger so you will understand this part, guys. So schema is valid, or this is a function, this is constant value schema, and in a curly bracket we are passing our JSON schema over here. You see, type object property, and then in a post main dot response dot to have JSON schema is equal to this value schema. Okay, so this one line you should remember, then this one line you should remember for rest assured. If they ask you how you can validate the JSON schema, so matches JSON schema in class path, and we then provide the file name, and over here you can provide like this way. Okay, so these are the different way you can do the validation of the JSON schema, guys. Okay, but the first steps will start like get the expected schema that you want to validate. Okay, so these are the things. Then another things you need to also make sure, right? Okay, the nested, the common checks in schema validation. So what are the common checks you perform in your validation? That is one of the things they will ask you. Okay, so data type, you need to identify if they are string, integer or boolean values. Then required fields present, if there is a required field present or not in schema. Then enum values means it is any drop down or is any list view, that need to also validate that part. Then nested object or array, so if there is a nested of, like let's suppose in a city you will have a zip code or you have a area code or something like that way. So nested object you need to validate. Then the value construct, like minimum length, maximum length of that specific field property, then you need to identify. Then pattern matching, like email format or mobile number format, like regular expression you can use over here to validate the JSON schema. Okay, so these are the common check for the schema validation: data type, required field validation, enum validation, nested object validation, value constraint, and pattern matching. So this is the way you should answer this question in your interview, guys. If they will ask you how to perform the schema validation, at least remember a couple of things from this particular screen. It is more than enough for you to answer, and then you can relate these particular things with your project as well. You can identify a couple of examples with your project, and it's more than enough for you. Okay, so hope this help you to crack your interview in future. So keep learning and share and subscribe to our channel to your colleagues who is willing to jump into the QA automation role, and this playlist will definitely helpful to them. Okay, thank you for watching.